We are live, RainierAvenueRadio.world. Happy to be here at Bloodworks Northwest. Joining me here before the event actually starts is Kurt Bailey, CEO and President of Bloodworks Northwest. How are you?
I'm doing just fine.
All
Thanks for
right.
joining us tonight.
Oh, it is our pleasure. Well, let's start off by talking about Bloodworks Northwest. For anybody who may be watching or tuning in right now and says, "Okay, I think I know what they do," but let's start with that. Bloodworks Northwest. What's the role that you play in our community?
Our primary role is to ensure that anyone who needs blood, a patient, perhaps a cancer patient, or someone who's been in an auto accident, or perhaps somebody who needs a surgery, has blood for that event. And we collect blood up and down the Pacific Northwest from the Canadian border
Wow.
all the way down to mid-Oregon. And then we process that blood and we test that blood and then we send it out to hospitals all over the Pacific Northwest for use every single day.
Okay, and so this is essentially Northwest. This is regional,
hmm
and so the blood that you collect is also regional, or does that come from other places as well?
For the most part, everything we use here, we collect here.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about the different reasons why folks may need blood. Why there is a need for blood. Why Blood North. Why you exist.
Well, blood is a central part of our care for patients. And amazingly, cancer patients often need blood. They may need red blood cells in order to carry oxygen throughout their body and to remove waste in their body. They may need platelets, and platelets are the things that help us clot when we
Okay.
bleed. And oftentimes, cancer patients have impairments to their platelets, and so they need platelets. Folks who are involved in an accident and there's a bleeding trauma,
hmm
well, if they're losing blood, we got to give them some more blood.
Okay.
And so we use red cells to ensure that they've got enough blood in their body, and then we give them platelets sometimes just to help stop that bleeding. And then surgeries, similarly, surgeries are intentional bleeding sometimes, whether they're a surgery, for example, for a transplant, and then there can be a loss of blood, and so we replenish the blood while the patient's undergoing that procedure. And then another reason is obstetric hemorrhage, and so moms postpartum who bleed excessively, and so the moms need some blood in order to get through that safely. So blood's used every day. We need about 900 people to walk through our doors, whether it's the door of one of our mobile buses or whether it's the door of one of our donor centers. We need 900 people a day to walk in and freely give their blood so that we in turn can provide blood to all the patients that need it every day.
Now, how are we doing with that? Are we getting the numbers that we need? Are we making sure that we have enough blood for in case there maybe an emergency happens, whatever that may be?
It's touch and go.
Okay.
Truth is, it's touch and go. And over the last 10 years, the number of persons who donate blood every day in the Pacific Northwest has declined.
Oh, really?
And that's really strange because we know there's a million new people, literally, in Washington State over the last 12 years. So even though the population's grown, we actually collect less blood. And we don't really know why. There's something that has happened such that folks maybe don't find it so convenient, or they don't realize how important it is, they don't know how blood is used. And so part of our job now is to reconnect with the public and let them know that if you come in and you give blood, your blood's going to get used within a few days. And it's going to go to a neighbor, a friend, a family member, because 1 in 6 Americans someday will receive at least 1 unit of blood. So the chances are you or I might well need that blood someday. So pay it forward and go donate, sort of what we help the community to understand. And we don't collect enough blood today.
All right. If you're just tuning in again, joining me is Kurt Bailey, President and CEO of, it looks like we're Bloodworks Northwest, and I think we're about to get started here. So I'm going to transfer the broadcast over to our host. I think if we're getting started here, bear with me here. This may be another. Um, okay, Kurt, I think we are getting started. So if you'll come back, I'm going to transfer over to our host, and we'll pick up this conversation in a little bit.
Marvelous.
All right.
I have to use both microphones. I am thrilled that I was asked to come and to help you during this time, because what we're talking about today is so very important. It's important, period, because of course blood is life, and I'm really speaking to the choir here, but we need to make sure, and I'm happy to help get that message out to everyone, particularly communities of color, communities that are not as represented as we all know they must be. We're all human beings. We all have blood. That's what I said yesterday when I had my blood drawn. Happily, I still have blood. And so we need to get the message out to everybody. So we want to welcome you to Bloodworks Northwest Cord Blood Program's Black History Month kickoff. Tonight, we're going to hear from politicians, community members, and physicians about why Bloodworks Northwest is taking a special interest in supporting the African American community here in Seattle. And our first speaker this evening is Councilmember Girmay Zahilay, I think I got that right. I hope so. There you are. I know you.
Great to meet you too. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Should I hold this one?
Hold them both.
I'll hold them both. Okay. Oh, radio. Yes. Love it. Thank you all so much for inviting me to this program tonight. My name is Girmay Zahilay. You almost got it right. I'm a council member for King County District 2, and I would like to start off by thanking Tony B. and Rainier Avenue Radio. We're very thankful for the role that you play in spreading the message to our communities. So everybody give Rainier Avenue Radio a hand, please. I also want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to hear about this important program that Bloodworks Northwest is promoting. We have all heard about the shooting that occurred last week in downtown Seattle. Our hearts go out to the victims and their families. What gets lost in the public policy discussion, though, is the special role that Bloodworks Northwest plays in the emergency management system. I was glad to hear that Seattle Fire Chief Harold Scoggins singled out Bloodworks Northwest as their one community partner in his remarks at a press conference last week. Bloodworks Northwest and its partnership with Harborview Medical Center give our city a unique and trusted partnership in times of emergencies. It is reassuring to know that because of this partnership, we can provide emergency procedures at the most critical times. What we have to remember, though, is that the blood comes from members of our community, everyday people who are taking the small step and to make a sacrifice that means so much and has such a huge impact. People are overcoming their fears, their anxieties, their struggles, the demands on their lives to come out and give blood. It's remarkably selfless, and it connects all of us as one community. In Western Washington, only 38% of adults are eligible to give blood, and people are deferred for a variety of reasons. Of that 38% that are eligible, only 3% actually do give blood. And despite this low participation rate, in the 3 days following the shooting last week, Bloodworks Northwest was able to make up a blood deficit as more and more people decided to come out and give blood at a critical time. In a time of crisis, caring people stepped up to ensure that surgeries would be performed and lives would be saved. We need to make sure that this caring nature is consistent so that we can continue to have the resources to save lives. Bloodworks Northwest has a history of pioneering the advancement of social outcomes in blood health. Dr. Elo Giblett, known as the Rock of the Puget Sound Blood Center, was instrumental in desegregating the blood supply based on her research on blood group antigens, and her research actually ended up ending the practice of separating blood by race. Bloodworks Northwest continues to be a leader not only in blood banking, but blood health and blood research today. Bloodworks Northwest also continues to be a leader in the development and establishing inclusion in the blood supply, because only about 7% of the blood collected in the United States is from Black and African American people. Bloodworks Northwest is submitting a budget proposal in the Washington State Legislature to increase the number of phlebotomists from diverse backgrounds to help make the frontline staff look like the community it serves. This will also increase opportunities to help young people who may not have the means to find opportunities to start a career in healthcare. Tonight, we're here to learn about the critical role that cord blood plays in the development of life-saving treatments and procedures in healthcare. Juan back, everybody know Juan? He actually approached me and asked me to be the speaker about umbilical cord blood. And I completely support the mission, and I think it's super important. But I looked at him and I said, am I the best messenger for this? Because should I, as a male and somebody who does not have kids and who has never been pregnant, get up in front of a room full of people and ask people to donate their cord blood? And Juan said, yeah, you'll be great. And I was like, no, I won't. So I am here to introduce to you somebody who would be much better to talk about this topic than I would, and that person is my wonderful Chief of Staff, Ms. Rhonda Lewis. She's in here in the building. Rhonda is awesome. She comes to my office from the King County Executive's Office in Public Health. She was a deputy executive. She decided to come be my Chief of Staff after a huge role like that. I don't know why, but I'm super excited to have her on the team. District 2 is super lucky to have her on this team, and I'm so lucky to have her speak on this topic.
Thank you, Girmay. I appreciate that great introduction. You know, I have a really special day job, and in my day job, I get to sit shoulder to shoulder with this guy. I get to witness his brilliance, his energy, and his compassion. And one of the things that we've learned in the short time that we've worked together is that between the two of us, we're kind of like bookends. If there's a question that arises, if there's a concern, an issue, if one of us hasn't experienced it, most often the other one has. And so in that context, that's why I'm here tonight, to talk to you about my firsthand knowledge and my Bloodworks Northwest story. So several years ago, when I was pregnant with my first child, my husband and I did all the things that expectant parents are supposed to do. We did all the prenatal visits, all the vitamins, all the readings, all the books, all the magazines. We went through the process of choosing very meaningful baby names, packing the hospital kit, all the things, we did them all. Pregnancy went by without a hitch. And then when the appointed hour arrived, we traveled the mile or so from our home to the hospital. With no fear, no trepidation, we were just eager to get our little bundle of joy home and start our new phase of life. Well, after about 16 hours of labor, I was wheeled into a delivery room, and everything sounds routine so far, right? Well, my experience turned out to not be so routine. I awoke some hours after delivery in the ICU. When I was lucid enough to understand what had happened, I learned from my doctor that I had had the misfortune of having a retained placenta and very difficult to control hemorrhaging. That necessitated blood transfusions. And it was at a period where the blood supply wasn't really great. So she told me that I was going to be in the ICU for a little bit, that I needed to get as much rest as possible, and to be prepared for discharge with my baby boy in tow. We had no warning at all. I mean, my pregnancy was more than routine. So we had no warning at all that we were going to have such a difficult labor and delivery, and that it would happen at a time when we needed blood the most. Well, in my case, it was a case of all's well that ends well. We went on with our lives, our baby boy was healthy. Then 4 years later, we were preparing for the birth of our second child at the same hospital with the same doctor. So this time we had a heads up. We'd been put on notice. So anticipating all of the possibilities, I spent many hours at Bloodworks Northwest, then it was called Puget Sound Blood Center, came in for a series of appointments, and I donated and had stored my own blood, which could be stored for me in the case of an emergency. You know, when you're going through something like that, you think that the experience is yours and yours alone. What I've learned since then, what I know now, is that Black women are 2 to 6 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications. Now, my second pregnancy, second childbirth, again, no hitches at all. But that doesn't happen for everyone. High-profile women like Serena Williams and Beyonce have helped to shed light on this reality. In my case, we used a singular, personalized solution, self-donation. But Bloodworks Northwest, I don't have to tell you guys this, it provides community solutions and resources that can be brought to bear in instances like mine when there's no notice, when there's no warning, and in cases of labor and delivery, as well as to help patients with bone marrow failure, leukemia, anemias, and other blood-related diseases. So as Girmay mentioned, you are going to hear about the miracle of cord blood. Research is continuing to increase the range of patients for which cord blood is a suitable option. Bloodworks Northwest and Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center are offering hope for adults with life-threatening diseases and disorders. I have a child that has sickle cell trait. So this work is very important to us. It's very near and dear to our hearts. Tonight is about spreading the word about the need, and the word about how easy it can be to help fill that need. Cord blood transplantation offers hope for people in need of a match, and this is an area where African Americans are underrepresented. If I had the opportunity to help someone by donating cord blood, I would do it in a heartbeat. With our bone marrow system donation system, African American patients' chance of finding a donor match is about 19%, compared to 75% for white patients. Cord blood collected from non-white babies and babies of mixed ethnic origins are particularly helpful, and that's why we're here tonight. So in closing, I will say that you're going to hear more from Juan and others tonight, and from Deborah, I'm sure. And I appreciate you listening. Thank you for helping us spread the word about how, in the course of giving life, mothers of Black and mixed race babies can also help give life to others. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rhonda, for sharing that very personal, very moving story. And a reminder that, you know, things happen to all of us, and it doesn't matter your race, your creed, your color. None of that matters when you're in the hospital and you're delivering a baby and you suddenly need the help that's available. So why cord blood? And I have to say this, I'm learning a lot as well here tonight, because I've thought about cord blood a little bit, and but not enough, certainly. So umbilical cord blood contains an abundance of stem cells which can give rise to blood and white blood cells when transplanted, similar to bone marrow. That means cord blood gives critically ill patients with leukemia, lymphoma, and other blood diseases a chance for a cure. Why the need for diversity? Stem cell donors and cord blood units are selected for donation through a careful process of HLA matching. 70% of patients will not find a matching donor in their family. And the race doesn't matter in that case. I had a coworker who needed a kidney, and he could not find a match in his family. They finally found a match, but she was too physically small to donate to him, and I'm sorry to say that he did not survive. He did die. The likelihood of finding a good HLA match is 24% for African American patients compared to 66% for white European patients. One of our community's greatest needs is for cord blood donations from mothers of all racial backgrounds, because patients are more likely to match with a donor of the same race. So that's why, and that is why we are here tonight. So our next speaker is Dr. Rebecca Haley, who is the medical director of Bloodworks Public Cord Blood Bank. Dr. Haley.
Thank you. I have been asked to emphasize the disparity in health care with the African American community, and that is with the availability of transplant and for the mothers who are giving birth. I went to medical school in Eastern Virginia, and they had done a study where they were pointing out this healthcare disparity, and this is going to come back to cord blood in just a minute. Believe me, it'll come back. And they were, and in this study, they found that black women were 3 times, they were worse than the national average, 3 times more likely to have serious complications or die in childbirth than the white patients. And this did not help if you had a higher educational level, because usually women with higher educational levels are able to get better health care. They're better advocates for themselves. But they found in Eastern Virginia in this study that the black women were more likely, even if they were college graduates, they were less likely to get the kind of health care they needed than the high school educated women of other races. And that's not fair. That's not good. That's not what we're about. And what we need to do is advocate for standard and high-class health care for everyone. Now, how does that fit with cord blood donation? One of the things that is sort of popular today is delayed cord clamping. And the delayed clamping waits longer to get the placenta delivered. Well, that can be a danger to the mom and can leave the mom bleeding for longer. In cord blood, we like to get the placenta dealt with earlier because that gives us a better donation. And studies in even the New England Journal have told us that the babies turn out just as well. They're just fine. And so we're advocating for better health care for the people in need of transplants and better health care for the mothers who are delivering the babies. And everybody's talked about their family. I'll say in my family that my granddaughter was a wonderful cord blood donor, and she is just as sharp as a tack. So I can be a grandparent testimonial for the goodness of giving cord blood, both to increase the transplant supply and to tell you that it really turned out well for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Haley. I didn't realize there are so many people here who have ties to Virginia. I grew up in Newport News, Virginia, and then Daneen Clark grew up in Hampton, Virginia. I went to Hampton University, which is in Hampton, Virginia, so it's almost like a reunion with people I didn't even know until today. So it's good to hear from all of you. Well, we want to give you some quick facts about cord blood donation. Does donation impact my baby? No. The collection of cord blood just after birth does not harm the mother or the child. May I donate if I delay cord clamping? Yes. Cord blood donation collection is possible following the recommended 30 to 60 seconds delayed cord clamping. What does it cost to donate? Nothing. Donating blood from your baby's life-saving umbilical cord is completely free. A sample of the mother's blood is taken and tested for infectious disease to reduce the risk of transmitting an infection to the future transplant recipient. All information collected, including test results, are kept completely confidential. If your baby's cord blood does not meet requirements for transplant banking, it will still be used. Cord blood stem cells form blood and blood-related cells necessary for clinical trials and scientific research. You may further life-saving breakthroughs when you donate cord blood. So finally tonight, we will hear from Kurt Bailey, Bloodworks Northwest's CEO.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the wonderful sharing of experiences tonight. And really the only thing I'd like to emphasize as the chief executive of Bloodworks is that we're doubling down on the collection of umbilical cord blood from donors of African descent. And the reason we're doing this is because we know there's a need. In our history, we have been collecting cord blood for, I believe, almost 20 years. And nearly 60% of the cord bloods donated by moms of African descent have been sent for transplant, which is just an amazing impact that we have had through our banking efforts to date. But it speaks as much to the need that there exists out in the community to have sufficient cord bloods from donors of African descent, because those transplants save lives. So we're doubling down, we're all in to make sure that we eliminate this health disparity. So thank you everyone for coming, and we're all in.
Thank you so much. Well, we're at the end already. So thank you so much for coming. It's really been illuminating for me. Even during this time, I've learned so much more about cord blood donations, about all of you. And we so appreciate, Rhonda, that you took the time to share a very personal story, but one that certainly had a happy ending. So we're grateful for that. So thank you so much. You know that we have mocktails. I was so happy to hear that, because I was saying I can't have anything to drink before I do this. But we want you to take the opportunity to take a guided tour of the cord blood lab with Dr. David Lynn. Who's Dr. Lynn? There he is, Dr. Lynn. All right, well, thank you so much for coming, and we so appreciate all of you being here, and we hope you're going to help spread the word about the need for blood cord donation from all communities, but especially those of color. Happy Black History Month, everybody.
We are live here at Rainier Avenue Radio. Again, Bloodworks Northwest, the core blood, and we heard some wonderful explanations about what that is exactly about. And maybe I can see that on here again. What is it? Is it cord blood? Make sure I get that right. Cord blood reception. All right. Once again, welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio, and we're celebrating Black History Month kind of early here, January 30th, and this is an opportunity for Bloodworks to get things started off by talking about the importance of blood donation and how that impacts our African American communities disproportionately, which ends up being a health disparity. Good to see you. Thank you for coming. You know I'd try and pull you over here for a minute, but it looked like you got to go, so. And that is our King County Councilmember District 2, Girmay Zahilay, who was the keynote speaker here today. And so we're going to get a couple people over here to talk to us and share more information about not only Bloodworks and Bloodworks Northwest and what Bloodworks Northwest does, but also find out more information on the different blood types and again how this impacts our communities and actually other way. Oh, there we go. There we go. And the hostess with the mostest. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for all you have done for our communities, just in general.
Thank you for saying that.
We'll start with that. Some wonderful things were said, and I say wonderful in regard of getting the messaging out. But we're talking about things that disproportionately impact the black community.
Absolutely. And of course, we know the history that African Americans have had with the medical community, and also the feeling that people have had that they can't trust
Right.
the medical community. And that still is something that anybody who is involved with blacks and healthcare have to deal with and have to concern themselves with. And it takes a sensitivity that I think sometimes is lacking. You know, that people maybe perceive as, oh, they just don't know. No, there is a history that explains why there's been a lack of trust, even with organizations like Bloodworks Northwest. The fear of not knowing what's going to happen with the blood, of people's blood being tainted, just in general of not being treated with the respect and regard that so many other communities have been.
Yes, and you bring up an amazing point there that historically we know how that has impacted us. In this particular case, not that I expected you to have all of the answers, but one of the things that we're trying to do this month, again, is increase the participation of African Americans in donating blood.
Absolutely.
And how do we get beyond the barriers and challenges that exist in our community?
Well, I think one way to get beyond the barriers and the challenges is to give people the respect that they deserve, and to make sure that they understand that you understand. And so not say, well, what's wrong with you, but to say, look, give the facts, tell what's happening, and tell how important this is, because if, as Rhonda Lewis found, you find yourself in a position where you need a blood transfusion, it doesn't matter whatever your politics are, your race, none of that matters. You have a critical need and it has to be met, and it will be met through Bloodworks Northwest, because this is where the blood is collected. When I had surgery some time ago, I came to give myself blood, as did Rhonda Lewis, who was talking about what her experience was. And so really that was the first time that I had come. And here I am. I could have come many times, but I had never come until then. And then you see the value of what is happening in the room right behind us. You know, that life-saving work is happening, and we as individuals can participate in helping to save those lives. And all by doing this, by squeezing your hand while your blood is going into a pouch.
Now, don't anyone out here feel shame, because I'll tell you, I've given blood only once in my lifetime.
And we're in the majority. I'm sorry to say, we are in the majority. The majority does that.
And I mean, I'm once in my lifetime.
Once. Some people never.
And it's been a long life.
It's been a long life, exactly.
So,
we hope it goes on at that.
And hearing even the messaging that I heard today about the importance and the number of different reasons. Sometimes you think, and yes, of course, when there's a tragedy and an emergency, you need to get blood.
Right.
But there are surgeries. There are a number of different reasons. Transfusions.
Every day.
Yes.
Every day things are happening. Now, let me tell you, they won't turn it down when you come when there is a big emergency. They will take you. In fact, when I was talking to them about it just a few moments ago, Sue Nixon, who handles marketing, said that when they put out the word that we need people to come and give blood, 800 people came. That's a lot of donations.
Wow.
And that's the power of getting the word out to all of these groups and organizations. But I also think, and I feel very passionately about this, that just as Bloodworks Northwest goes around to businesses and those sorts of places to get the message out, to get people in to give blood, they will need to do that as well, to go to the African American community, to go to churches, to go to the places where we are, because that is the only way that you will actually get the message out. It takes work. It's not a small matter. It's not something that you just do casually. It's something that takes work. They say they're devoted to this, that they plan to do it, they're doubling down, as the CEO said, then that means that they have to have a broad program of making sure that people feel included, feel valued, and to find out what their needs are. What is it that's keeping them from giving blood? I don't know all of the answers. I could come up with some myself. But in order to know what to do, you have to ask people themselves. And you must go to them. I feel very passionately about that. You must go to them.
You know, and that's a great point. And part of that is creating partnerships in the community and establishing relationships with trusted community advocates.
Absolutely.
Which means you have to know who those folks are.
Right. For the community you seek to reach. But just because you think that they are respected members doesn't mean the community feels that way. So you have to go to where they are. You have to find partners, because every group needs partners in order to achieve anything at all. And so I'm glad they're highlighting this during Black History Month, the beginning of it. But I hope that if indeed the CEO is telling us exactly what they plan to do, this is just the launch of that, and they're going to be doing more and more of that with time, because it can't be a one-time effort. It has to become part of their DNA here at Bloodworks Northwest to make sure that the word gets out, to make sure that people feel included, feel that that their work, that what they are giving is valued and is valuable. We know that it's valuable, but they have to also know that they are valued as well.
Well, and we can do things like this and get the word out, but again, there has to be that reciprocal effort so that folks know it's supported. One of the things that won't change are the statistics. I don't know if you have them with you.
I do have
earlier.
them right here.
If you can, again, share those with
Absolutely.
our audience. For those of you who are just joining us or may have this earlier, this was our host for the evening, Miss Deborah Horne.
Yes.
Thank you again for doing that.
It's my pleasure.
We are at Bloodworks Northwest, and this is the cord blood reception.
Yes, because the whole idea that they are doubling down, as they say, on trying to make sure that African Americans and, communities of color in general, but African American specifically, begins to be involved in helping donate umbilical cord blood. And I have to say, this is all really news to me as well. I mean, I cover the news, but I rarely come to these kinds of things and learn this kind of information. So that's what's so important. So what are the issues? Well, does it hurt your baby? No, it does not. So you collect the blood just after the birth of the baby. It does not harm the baby.
Okay, and I'm going to double down on that, because, one of the things we talked about is suspicion.
Absolutely.
Someone has a baby. You're not trying to do anything to harm your baby, but we know this to be fact, that it does not harm the baby.
It does not harm the baby.
Okay.
It does not harm the baby, nor does it harm the mother.
Okay.
And the umbilical cord is removed, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't stay with the baby or the mother. And so, but there's valuable blood that is in that cord that has been thrown away forever. And now we know that over the last few decades, they've tried to get the word out in larger communities, and now, happily, they are zeroing in on the African American community, saying how valuable it is that this blood cord donation be made. And it's made without you having to do anything. It's free, and they will test your blood. If there are some diseases of some sort that have become an issue, no problem, it can still be used. I think about, I don't know how many people know about Henrietta Lacks.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and she's a woman who had
If you don't know about Henrietta Lacks, as they say, you better ask somebody.
Yeah, definitely. And the problem for her, of course, is she had a virulent form of cancer. And so much so that the cells today are still being used to help and heal others. And yet, and this is the travesty, and this is what the bar that has to be crossed for all organizations involving with medical things, is that her family never knew that they were using her priceless cells that even today, I was at the University of, I was at Fred Hutch, and they showed me how they can actually make a culture with her cells today. That's how incredible her cells have been in helping them to cure cancers, to find new ways to treat cancers. And so we have given so much to this country in so many ways, even when we didn't even know it.
The family did not benefit.
Not initially, but now they have.
Now they are.
Yeah.
And so these, again, are some of the reasons why there is hesitancy in our
Absolutely.
community.
It's
To
a legitimate
participate.
thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's not made up.
Yeah.
It's not fantasy. These are things that have happened. But we all get sick. We all need help. And so we have to move past it. And it is up to organizations like Bloodworks Northwest. And what we have to do is hold them to their commitment that indeed they're going to double down and they want to make sure to get the message out and to take their message to people of color. African Americans, especially because of all the groups, we're the ones who have the lowest amount of participation. And we still have a great need. 70% of patients will not find a matching donor in their family. 70%. So this is when you need a stem cell transplant, and that when you need a stem cell transplant, you're in desperate. You're in desperate state.
70%
Will not find a matching
will
donor
not find
in their own family.
in their own family. One more again. That is because you would think that your family member would be the one who would be the most likely to match.
Without certainly more than people you don't know, strangers, and that is not the case.
That's another reason why we need to make sure that we give blood.
Absolutely. And so here you have 70% of the patients will not find a match. The likelihood of finding a good match is 24% for African American patients compared to 66% for white European patients. So if you need a stem cell transplant and only 24% will find that means that we have 76% who die.
You have a 1 in 4 chance.
Yes. And that's really tragic and frightening, especially if you're the person in that group.
Yes.
And you don't want to be, but the most important point is that if you are, there is help available, but only if we participate in it and make sure that our contribution is a part of it, because what they tell me is that African Americans, even if they're not related, tend to be a better match for other African Americans. So that is the other reason that we need to be helping, because we'll be helping someone whose name we may not know, whose name we may know. We may even be helping ourselves. I'm amazed by the people who end up needing stem cell transplants. People I never would have thought of before, but indeed they need the help. And now we have an opportunity, and we're hearing that there's an opportunity for all of us to help.
All right. So as a community radio station, one of the things that I know that we need to do now is also hold their feet to the fire.
Absolutely.
And this should not be the first time that we are sharing this information with our community. I can tell you what, it certainly won't be the last time. And we will make sure that we create partnerships and that the relationship is reciprocal so that we can continue to stay on top of things. Again, we always want to know when there's some sort of shortage.
Yes.
Because when things get critical,
course.
we want to be able to share that information so the community can respond. But as you were saying before, you don't have to wait for a shortage.
They'll take you anytime.
Yeah, at any time.
Anytime that they're open, they will take you to come and give your blood.
Well,
and we know that blood is life.
Yes.
We all need it to survive.
Well, I again want to thank you so much for doing this, for sharing information, for what you have been doing for our communities. I certainly would like to give you the opportunity for some final words if you'd like to talk to our Rainier Avenue Radio audience and just share anything that you'd like to share.
Well, I just feel privileged that you gave me an opportunity to speak at all. I love to talk. Hence what I do for a living. But also, I just love that you are doing this and making sure that the community hears about this. We need as many forums as we can to get the message out. And so we appreciate that you're watching, that you're listening, and we hope that just by hearing this, that it will make you say, I need to do that. I need to do something, and if I can't, then I will help others to do it as well. Because you never know when someone needs help, and it could be you.
Yeah. Now, you always have a home on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Well, all righty then. This is wonderful to hear.
Whether you want to come share a message or you just want to come to the studio down on Rainier Avenue and sit down for a minute.
All right.
Come on and make yourself at home.
I'll do it.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
You're listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world, and we are live here at Bloodworks Northwest. Go ahead and stick those on. And again, we're live here on Rainier Avenue Radio, and I'm reading the name tag, and it's Evan Delay.
Yes.
Hello, Evan. How are you? Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio. And again, let's talk about your role here.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here. I'm a nurse at Bloodworks Northwest.
Okay.
I've been here for about 3 years, but prior to joining, I was a labor and delivery nurse for 10 years. And so when we started focusing our energy on expanding this cord blood donation program, it was a natural fit for me to help out because I have the firsthand experience of collecting cord blood in hospitals.
So again, let's get maybe a bigger explanation of cord blood and why cord blood.
So cord blood basically contains these very special cells. People have heard a lot about bone marrow transplant, but not as much about cord blood. So the easiest way to start is to say it's got the similar life-saving capabilities of a bone marrow stem cell transplant. It's just coming from the placenta and the umbilical cord. So it's not coming from the baby, which is a common misconception. The baby's already delivered and the cord is cut. So the baby doesn't feel this. The blood is not coming from the baby. It's actually coming from the blood that's remaining in the placenta before the placenta is delivered.
And what made you decide to go into this particular field?
I just love OB. My mom's a midwife. I was a labor and delivery nurse for a long time. I've been in hundreds of births, and I just know how valuable this resource is and that it's really not that hard to get it. I think part of the reason that people maybe don't do it is because they just don't have the education of how easy the donation is. And so I'm pretty passionate about getting that message out.
All right. Once again, you're listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world. We're coming to you live from Bloodworks Northwest. And so what we've heard, and this is your Black History Month celebration, for cord blood, which again is...
Cord blood is the blood that's contained in the placenta, and it has these cell-forming cells that are life-saving. So similar to a bone marrow transplant, it has cells inside that can be used for transplantation.
So part of the reason why I'm doing it, part of the thing that has to happen is the word has to get out to people.
Absolutely.
You know, and you may not be in the marketing department, but from your perspective, what are some of the challenges that you see or that you have faced, or even the consequences of not having the supplies that you need?
I think just education. Every time that I talk to a mom and explain what cord blood donation is, they say whether they've already had a baby or they're pregnant currently, if I only would have known. And so if we can reach people before they're pregnant and while they're pregnant, that's great. Reaching people after the fact, it's such a disappointment because I've talked to hundreds of moms that have said, if I only would have known, I would have happily donated. So I think the key piece is education. Okay.
Do you know what some of the efforts are to make sure that you reach populations, and in particular during Black History Month, we're hyper-focusing on African American families who are suffering at the end of the day what end up becoming health disparities?
Yes.
Are you aware of some of the outreach that's being done right now to make sure that a number of communities who aren't getting the message begin to get the message?
We are doing our absolute best, and we love feedback on how we can do better. We're looking at what hospitals patients deliver at, so we're trying to partner with hospitals that have a large racial and ethnic background and not just mostly Caucasian people delivering there. So that's one thing, like Valley Medical Center. And another key piece is partnering with community organizations. So doing events like tonight, we're also partnering with the group Living Well Kent to help them spread the word, and we're really just getting started here. So I think any feedback that anyone has tonight, we're going to take to the drawing board and see how we can get our message out there.
All right. A couple more questions. One, just tell us a little something about yourself.
Well, I think I've already said it a couple times, but being a labor and delivery nurse has been a huge part of my life, and I'm really passionate about maternal and fetal medicine, safety, care, and being a part of Bloodworks has just expanded that because the cord blood program collects cord blood that's available for patients all over the world. So having that reach has just been really exciting for me.
Well, again, thank you for joining us on RainierAvenueRadio.world. And the other thing that I was going to have you do before you walked away was if there was something that you wanted to say to our audience that is watching and listening right now, what would that message be?
It would just be that donating your cord blood is a really simple thing to do to save a life. Please contact us, look on our website, reach out to us via email, and we're happy to talk to you and answer any questions to make it a good option for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. RainierAvenueRadio.world. And go ahead and stick those on. And now you can hear me?
Hi, how's it going?
Hello, Daneen. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fabulous today.
Awesome. So welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio. You're on the air, and good to have you joining us. Again, we're here at Bloodworks Northwest, the cord blood reception, Black History Month celebration, but also a very necessary sharing of information that's taking place today. Let's start by, let's tell the folks what you do here at Bloodworks Northwest.
Well, I'm one of the philanthropy officers for Bloodworks Northwest, so I deal with a lot of the fundraising aspect to try to get some awareness out to our blood donors and volunteers in the community about the importance of what we do. A lot of times people don't realize that it can be very expensive to get blood mobiles and to keep facilities running to be able to offer this wonderful service to people in our community.
Okay. And what are some of the challenges from your perspective that additionally you face in particular when getting this information out to communities of color and into Black communities? And you talked about blood mobiles, you
Yes.
know, as a way, which means essentially going to people, I guess, you know, to get blood. But at the same time, by sharing more information in the community, we want folks to get more engaged.
Absolutely. As a woman of color myself, there's a distrust in the healthcare community in general. We've been mistreated through Tuskegee experiments in many different ways, even in different things like when we look at police brutality and things like that are top issues for people in our community that a lot of times we're afraid to go in.
Ms. Horne and I were just talking about Henrietta Lacks.
Absolutely.
And that whole, like I said, if you don't know, you need to know. But
and that's a perfect example where, and a lot of times it can also be a communication barrier. Like in Harriet's situation, when the researcher went to talk to her, it actually was that they thought that she was talking a cell, that they had locked her up, and they were talking about stem cells, which is a complete difference in conversation. And it really just had to do with a lot of times people from different ethnic groups speak differently. And so if you don't have people that are representative of the community that can speak in the same way, there can be a lot of miscommunication and distrust that way. And it's what I like to consider a communication barrier. And so one of the things that I love about Bloodworks is that we are very representative of different communities by having people of color here that can represent those communities. When I first started with Bloodworks, I actually worked on the Bloodmobile. So I actually drew blood and drove the Bloodmobile. And so we would go to different communities. We would go to places like the Filipino Fest, and we would go to all these different places in Seattle. And the thing that I loved the most about it was that the people that I worked with were people I could relate to because they also had the same complexion I did. And one of my best friends, Kyla, who's a tech, she's Indonesian and she could speak Chinese. So you can imagine to someone who's Chinese how warm and inviting it is when someone can just say hello in your language. And so I think that's very important, is to build that trust. And the thing is, a lot of people just don't realize there's a disparity because of information. A lot of times when an African-American woman is in the hospital, she might not necessarily get the care, as we learned earlier today in the presentation, even if she has a college education, if she's African-American. And so the question is there a bias in the healthcare system towards African-Americans in general, and what can we do to bridge that gap?
That's a question?
Oh, well, of course, no. I think it's very important to be able to educate healthcare providers on that bias and be able to say, are you presenting all the options that are possible to every single woman to ensure that they're getting not only just the care, but a chance to be able to save the life of children in our community. The people that need stem cells are us. You know,
Yeah.
You know, that kind of always has worn, as a woman and as an African American woman especially, I can't look at a child and say that our community didn't do the absolute best by donating cord blood to give them the opportunity at life than other communities are doing. And that's something that we have to take accountability for and stand up for.
Well, I have to tell you, there are some things that I heard today that I had never heard before, and that just doesn't make sense to me.
Absolutely.
That I'm not. So if you're listening out there and you're thinking, okay, well, you know, I don't know, but don't be ashamed. You know, there's also a responsibility to get the word out.
Oh, yes.
That this is available, and again, some of the statistics that we heard from Ms. Horne today, you know, the disparity that engages and involves African Americans. So what makes you do this type of work? Why do you choose to do this type of work?
Well, it actually starts when I first started here. I'm not gonna lie, it was more of just, it was a job. I was still feeling it out. But I met so many wonderful people, and I actually met my best friend Kendra, and Kendra is actually part of the Metropolitan Sickle Cell Anemia Task Force, and she is a long-term sufferer of sickle cell anemia. She's had thousands of transfusions, and she has volunteered with our organization for many years. And over that time, we've gone out together, we have gone to church together, we've done everything together. And I consider her one of the closest people I know, and if anything ever happened to her, I would die inside. And we were talking one day, let's go to Vegas one day. And guess what? For her to even get on the plane, it requires blood transfusion.
Wow. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. One more again. To get on the plane requires a blood transfusion.
Because of the air compression and that she has sickle cell. And so it's already compressed cells, so it's just compressing it even more. And so every time she has to go in for a surgery, my heart drops. And so I have no doubt in my mind that what they're doing here is truly saving lives, because it's saving the lives of someone I consider my best friend.
Bloodworks Northwest, this is the cord blood reception celebrating Black History Month. Right here on the corner is Minor and Terry, right?
Terry and...
Or no, Minor and Madison, or Terry and Madison?
Terry Madison.
Terry and Madison. Terry and Madison. So if folks would like to give blood, how can they do that? What are the steps that they have to take in order to be able to give blood?
It's actually a lot easier than people think. If you go to www.bloodworksnorthwest.org, they have an appointment. We even have an app at this point, but all the information is up there to tell you a little bit about the process, locations. You can come to a center. We have mobiles. They go all the way up from Bellingham, all the way down to Oregon. And so it's really pretty simple to be able to connect and come out. It only takes 45 minutes to an hour. And what I tell people is, in 45 minutes to an hour, you can do more for this world than some people will do in their entire life. For every donation, you can actually save up to 3 lives. And because blood typing is ethnic specific, there is a chance that your unit can actually go to somebody in your community that wouldn't be able to get a transfusion unless you came in that day. And so we have some people on the Tree of Life, which is over to the right. They've given over 100 units. And if you even use the 6 degrees of separation, and because we're a community blood center, when you donate with Bloodworks Northwest, even when you walk on the street, there's a chance you're passing by the person you saved.
Yeah.
And that's special.
And Ms. Horne was telling me that 70% of the people in your family probably are not a match.
It's very true. Well, and it really depends. The truth is, if the blood bank itself, if we had a cord blood, if we actually had cord blood like how we have blood banking, where everyone was donating the cords regularly, there would be such a supply. Right now, I think it's like the statistics: 95% of cord blood is tossed in the trash.
95%.
95% gone. And so it's not even just about cord blood for just transfusion purposes, but even you look at research. I believe it's over 70 different diseases have treatments using cord blood stem cells. And the difference between cord blood stem cells and regular stem cells is the match doesn't have to be exact as they do with other stem cells. So especially with people who are diverse, those stem cells can be the difference between life or death and finding a match with urgency.
Wow. Well, this can't be the last time that we do this. As a local media organization, community radio station, I think one of our responsibilities is to make sure that, as you say, you are doubling down on it, that we hold your feet to the fire and make sure that you use us as a conduit to continue to share information and engage folks and create that trust that's needed for community to believe in the safety of what's going to be happening here. And again, some of the things that we had talked about earlier, which are inherent distrusts of medical procedures because of what's taken place with African Americans in the past.
Absolutely.
So if there was something that you would like to say, your personal message, that you would like to share with some folks right now who are probably like me going, okay, this is a lot of information to take in.
It is.
You know, at one time, and I'm hearing it. But yeah, but no.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say?
I would say that 45 minutes. You can do anything. You have 24 hours in a day.
Mm-hmm.
If it only took 45 minutes and you knew you could save someone's life, would you do it? If you're pregnant and you're going to have a baby, and I told you, in your hand you're holding a piece of tissue, and it was life-saving, would you still throw it away? Or would you make that decision to save someone's life with it? It would seem simple. If I was holding a piece of tissue, I wouldn't just throw it in the trash. If you told me it was going to save someone's life, I'd be like, here. That's all cord blood donation is. You have a life-saving piece of tissue that will have no harm to you or your baby once you give birth. And by simply taking that cord and allowing us to take it, you're going to give another mother a chance at saving her child's life. And if someone feels that it's like, oh, I don't know, I would definitely say go to Bloodworks Northwest. And there's a variety of other websites that can tell you more about cord blood. And the more you find out, the more you know, the more confident you will be in making your decision. I would say the most important thing that someone could do is educate themselves before determining yes or no in any situation.
All right. Daneen, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you
for
so much.
joining us here on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Thank you for having me.
Keep doing the work that you're doing.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. You should be able to hear me now.
I can.
Oh, you can hear me.
Yes.
And joining me right now is Becky Haley. Now, I don't know what the title was in front of that, but I know that you spoke very eloquently about things that I would call medically related when you were speaking before. So let's start with that. What is your role here and why are you here today?
I'm the medical director
Okay.
of the cord blood program. And I'm a physician and boarded in internal medicine, hematology, and oncology.
Right.
So those are my specialties.
Mm-hmm.
But I have worked for many years providing cells for transplant for people, and started some of the early cord blood banks nationally when public cord blood banking became possible, and came here to work with this cord blood program.
Okay.
And we obtained an FDA license, which is very hard to get, and which we work very hard for, but it's a testament to the fact that our cord blood is of the highest quality, and we've sent about 1,100 units all over the world to people who matched with the cord bloods that we've collected and stored here.
Okay. Now, I want to back up a little bit. And in particular, if you're talking about the African American community, first of all, you just hear give blood and
Right.
what that means. Or
Absolutely.
you hear the term plasma or other things. But this concept, this cord blood,
Okay.
can you give us more of a history about, what got started, when you began to find out, the value of this cord blood and kind of the history of why we're doing this now?
Well, we're doing this now because there was a group of really bright scientists in New York City in the middle to late 1980s.
Okay.
And they were studying the blood that is left over in the umbilical cord and placenta after the baby is delivered, and the baby is separated from the mom, and that blood that is left over is no longer needed. Well, these scientists started looking at that and they said, gee, this blood has really special properties. It has the ability to have cells that reproduce and grow, and that we know that in adult transplants, that's a sign of engraftability. And so, since this is...
I got to back you up there. It says
okay.
for engraftability.
It means that thank you, that the cells can go into the bone marrow of a person who's been treated so that they can accept it and replace your diseased bone marrow with new cells.
Okay.
So there are a number of diseases that you really don't have a hope of getting well if you cannot get your blood cells replaced.
Mm.
And the one that we transplant for most often is acute leukemia.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just people that you know they're going to die from this if they don't get a chance at a transplant.
Mm.
And that's what we were talking about with our percentages. So what if you find yourself in this situation? You're told, okay, you need a transplant. And if you don't get a transplant, your hopes are dim.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are me, I'm too old, but if I needed that, I am Caucasian, Northern European. Most of the people who have volunteered as donors, and most of the people who have, and more of the people who volunteered as cord blood donors, are of that ethnic group. Mm-hmm. The African American supply of volunteer donors and of cord blood is much lower. Mm-hmm. That means that there is a big healthcare disparity when you need to have a transplant.
Yes.
It means that you don't have a chance at a person that could give you the second chance at life. And so that was the 75% versus 19% that we talked about. So someone of my lineage would have about 3.5 times better chance than you would. We want to fix that. We want that to be different. So when the cells go in and grow up inside of you, engraft, we say, then we found, and so back to my original story, they found that the cord blood cells were very good at growing out and engrafting. Mm-hmm. So they decided to try that as a source of cells instead of having to take people to the operating room and pull out bone marrow from adults. Mm-hmm. And it worked great.
Wow.
And the first one they did, it was smash hit.
All right.
And so then cord blood banks started up for relatives. If you knew that you needed a transplant for one of your children and you were having another child and that child was the lucky hit because you had a 1 in 4 chance of the next child matching. Well, that didn't happen often. And they said, well, what if we used unrelated people but who matched with the tissue type the way you need to? And that worked great.
Okay.
And so that's where we have our cord blood bank, where it is easier to find an acceptable cord blood match for people of all races, including African Americans, than it is with the adult donors, because the adult donors don't do as well when they're not quite as well matched. So this is maybe a kind of a biological shortcut to narrowing the gap of healthcare disparity among races.
Okay, now correct me if I'm wrong here. Ethnicity matters.
It matters.
Okay.
Just because my nose doesn't look like your nose, that means that that's inherited. I mean, tissue types are like that. All are good, all do the same. They're one of the ways we protect ourselves against disease. And your ancestors were exposed to different infectious diseases from mine. Because, you had in Africa, there are different regions that have different things. And so my ancestors evolved to fight the diseases they were exposed to. And so that's why we're different. It's just as simple as that. But that our own communities are the best sources for our rescue when we have need for things like blood and transplant.
What made you decide to get into this line of business?
Well, I was the kid that bandaged everybody's sores. I took care of the animals that got sick. I wanted to take care of people when I was a kid. So that was my interest, my bent, and so thank goodness I got to do it.
Well, what are some things that you can share with our audiences as you've been on this journey that you can let them know about the importance of why you do it? Maybe that might be success stories, maybe that anything that you want to share with folks where they may be like, I don't know, I don't get it, I don't, what's the impact? The cord blood, I don't know.
Well, I wish that you could talk to some of the people that spoke to a number of us who are in the delivering health care and transplants through cord blood that was held at the SCCA about 2 years ago. These people, what they were asked to do was to write a letter to the mother who decided to give the cord blood that saved their life. And all of these people who spoke to us that day were different races. Some were Asian, some were African American, and they had all been told essentially that they didn't have a match. And they all said, I can't tell you how thankful I am, mother of my cord blood donor. I don't know what made you decide to do that, but I am so eternally thankful. You were my only chance at life. And so that was extremely moving. That's why we all do it. It's hard work, but that's what we live for.
All right. Well, thank you for what you are doing and what you have done. Again, in celebration of Black History Month, we are live here at Bloodworks Northwest. This is the cord blood reception, and joining me is Dr. Haley. Before you go, Dr. Haley, would you like to say any final words to our audience that's watching and listening, and many probably for the first time like me are hearing about this just now?
Well, I would like to say, please consider your fellow man when you're having a baby, because if you have a normal pregnancy and you're healthy, then giving this leftover blood away really is just a gift that costs you nothing. And it can be all the world to the person who gets it.
All right. Well, keep up the continued great work. Thank you.
Thank you
for joining us on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Thank you.
Again, we are live here at RainierAvenueRadio.world, and joining me, here he comes. Now, ordinarily, when you're hearing and seeing this gentleman, he's not for those of you, but for those of you who see him on the Rainier Avenue Radio, he's calling baseball, he's calling basketball, sometimes he's calling football. This is a different thing, Mr. Cotto. We don't talk about necessarily the other side of your life when we're doing the broadcast.
I sneak it in, though.
Okay.
I do sneak it in. But it's interesting, Tony, because that's the beautiful thing that you've created with Rainier Avenue Radio. You give all of us who are doing amazing things in our lives the opportunity to come and share aspects and be a part of things like broadcasting baseball and basketball games to the community. Then, and how wonderful the relationship is. For some of us, and I know there's I think of Cindy Bright, and I think of so many people at Rainier Avenue Radio who are really doing cool things in the community. You give us the opportunity to share those. And for those that don't know, I'm the Senior Government Affairs and Community Engagement Strategist at Bloodworks Northwest.
Hold on, one more again. That was way too many words in the title. Let's hear that one more again.
The senior, although I'm a very youthful senior, Senior Government Affairs and Community Engagement Specialist at Bloodworks Northwest.
All right.
And I basically, and this is what we do. This is what we do. We basically are taking this life-saving activity, one that's so important, into the community, and engaging, especially our minority community in particular. Tony, and you heard it referenced by Councilmember Zahilay, and I'm sure President Kurt Bailey probably talked about it a little bit, our Bloodworks CEO, and also Dr. Haley. But in our population, only 38% of adults are eligible to donate blood. 62% have a variety of different deferrals. And of that 38% in our country right now, around 3% are donating. And so we've got to work with
3% of the 38%.
Correct.
Are donating. Okay.
And of that 3%, only 7% is from the black community.
Okay.
So
and I know you want to keep that thought. But the thing that comes to mind is why?
That's what we are working on. We are engaging the community to find those answers. We're coming up with different ways to make an emotional tie to it. Give for someone who you know has had cancer. Give for someone who you know has been in an accident. Last Wednesday, we saw a very, very tragic shooting here in our city. The week before, Tony, we know there was snow, and that made it hard for people to get to our stations, and our blood donations go down. We were at a critical need for blood. After the shooting, Tony, we engaged blood donors, and people were lined up at stations throughout Western Washington to give blood. So we know that people want to support the community. It's about creating consistent opportunities to do it. A lot has changed in our community, as we know. We know there's a large group of people that's moving and coming to Seattle. It's not a secret anymore. This is a place that is becoming more and more populated. And what that does is it places a demand on everything and certain things we don't think about. And that is that there's more the surgeries, there's more patients in hospitals, and the demand for blood goes up. And we still have the same number of people and slightly less giving blood. That creates a problem. So it's really engaging the community about those issues, letting them know that it's very, very easy. It's painless. A lot of people have fear of needles. Getting people to understand that the needles are smaller now. They are coated with silicone. But Tony, think about it. If you saw a child in the street that was about to hit by a car, people would jump in front of that car to save that child. There's children who are sitting at Children's Hospital who are suffering from cancer, and they need platelets. And you're telling me that little needle scares you? I give it all the time. I give my platelets, I give my whole red blood cells, because that's going to save a young child who is going through a tough time physically, and also provide some peace and help to their parents. And I just think it's a unique thing to do, and it's a selfless thing to do, and we just need to make it more consistent in our community.
You're listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world. We're coming to you live from Bloodworks Northwest, and this is Juan Cotto.
The voice of baseball on RainierAvenueRadio.world. I'm looking forward to an exciting spring of baseball, Tony, and I cannot wait for the sun to start coming out past 5 o'clock, and we're watching some high school baseball action right here from the Metro League.
Now, one of the things that has become clear from talking to folks today, again, is that there's a lot that I did not know until today, attending this event and finding out this information. I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there. How do you bridge that gap of making sure that the people who need blood, who need to give blood, are aware that they can and they should, and that they're not going to be taken advantage of?
Absolutely.
And that it's safe, and not just safe in terms of the needle, safe in terms of, are you going to be experimented on? Are you going to be exposed to something? Are you going to be taken advantage of medically?
Not only medically, but Tony, if you think about it, in the Latino community right now, we have a lot of people who are skeptical of the fact that if we give our information to you, will that be given to ICE?
Yeah.
And the thing is, to all of those questions is, No, no, and no. I mean, it is a, you come in, we protect our clients' information. We protect donor information. We have protections that allow us to keep that information private, so it is protected. What we are going to depend upon is participation in events like this. We are working on working with a variety of different community organizations, different community leaders. Obviously, it was so great to see Councilmember Zahilay here, but we need more help. We had Councilmember Jenny Durkin here last summer. Kurt and Bailey and I had an opportunity to meet with Governor Jay Inslee and spread this message, and we're getting those messages out with key departments, key organizations in the community, and then we have to follow up with it aggressively. We have to depend upon people in the community, excuse me, who give blood, and make sure that they are sharing the fact that they do give blood, and sharing that with the community, and making sure that the community understands that they're committed to this, that it's been safe for them, and then also sharing a positive experience. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Making people know that it was a positive experience and they had a good time with it.
Well, I don't want to call this a start, because I'm sure it's not the start of it. But let's talk about the thought that went into putting on this event and talking about something that, again, for me, I'd never heard of, cord blood. What was the impetus in putting this event together to share this information?
We realized, Tony, that if we are going to make a dent in raising that 3% number, I mean, think about it. If we can get of that 38%, if we can get 3% to go to 6, if we can get 6% to go to 9, we will be able to really end a lot of issues that we're having around blood donations in our community. But we realize that if we're going to get to those types of numbers, we have to engage minority and underrepresented communities. There's just no way we're going to get to the numbers that we'd like to experience without having that outreach and not telling those stories. So we had looked at a variety of different things that we have been working on through our research lab and Dr. Haley's incredible team, and you heard some of the things that she's been working on. And that's where we decided to go ahead and look at some different projects that we had going on. And cord blood is such a promising element in healthcare right now. We thought that this one was important. We know that the amount of people who are signing up for bone marrow transplantation or the bone marrow registries, Tony, is so low that African Americans in particular have such a low chance of finding a match. And if they do have a cancer or a need for bone marrow, cord blood is an acceptable substitute. So we figured, let's do something where we are engaging the community, raising the awareness about a specific issue, and talking about an opportunity where we can really engage the public in per se in spreading that message.
Well, one of the things that I got out of today is that as a community radio station, we need to hold folks' feet to the fire to make sure that they follow up on this outreach and awareness creation.
Absolutely.
And understand the need to utilize community resources to share the message.
Yes.
And to find out who those folks are in the community, which is a little more than just making a phone call. That's getting into the community and finding out who those folks are who may not be known but are still highly impactful in the various communities. So at Rainier Avenue Radio, that's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that we hold Bloodworks Northwest to the commitment that they're saying. If you're going to double down, don't say you're going to double down and then do the same old thing.
No, there's no question about that. And I think from my experience at Fred Hutch, it is about building long-term relationships. It's about, and when I say a long-term relationship, I mean being consistent.
Yeah.
It's sitting down and finding organizations that want to work with you, that we're attending their events, that they're attending our events. Most importantly, we're inviting them to our things.
And see, a lot of people don't know, Juan, about the great work you have done for years.
Thank you.
In our communities. Doing what you've done, going back to Fred Hutch, the work that you've done, coming here to Bloodworks. Again, you may see Juan again calling the games, and then you heard that big long title he has. But aside from being an O'Day alum,
yes, bring that victory home. Just 2 blocks away from my alma mater.
We appreciate, Juan, the work that you have personally done and the way that you've given of yourself in impacting
Appreciate that.
you know, the things that go on in our communities, the people in our communities, and you've just been a wonderful leader. I don't want to call it behind the scenes because you're out front too, but the work that needs to be done that sometimes people don't see or don't think is sexy, somebody has to do it.
Well, you know, Tony, I mean, it was so great to hear Rhonda Lewis share her story, and I think, you know, a lot of people know my story of losing my son Salvador, coming up on, I can't believe it, you know, nine years ago. It'll be 9 years ago in June. And Tony, if by this work that I'm doing, if I can save one parent the horrible feeling of going through that, if we can save one child at Children's Hospital, if we can save one child somewhere, if we can save someone and help save a life, and simply by giving blood, I think it's a real unique commitment, and I've been blessed to be able to do this all these years.
All right. How often can a person give blood?
That's a great question. You can give red blood cells every 52 days. Okay, you can. Okay, Liz, good to see you. I do. It's Liz Thomas, okay. Longtime administrator. There we go. We get the intern. If we get my man Isaac. Wait a minute. Karen's gonna go get poked.
Oh,
here we go.
Oh well. Well, hold on, Karen. We're going to be signing off here in a couple. How are you doing, Ms. Thomas?
This is, you know, Tony B.
You look to me too. I think that we have. Yeah, I've been in Seattle longer than he has.
Boy, that says a lot because I've started to get here a while.
Thank you.
So Rhonda Lewis. Rhonda Lewis. Aaron, what is Aaron's name? Yeah, Aaron. The name is coming to me.
We've got a few minutes here left on the broadcast. Karen, why don't you step up here, and Isaac, why don't you step up on this side, and Lucius, why don't you step up here too? And hold on, Juan. I want to see. Just get everybody over here a minute. Hey, go ahead, Juan. And first of all, Juan, thank you for engaging the radio station.
Absolutely.
To be a part of this and bringing the radio station into the fold and awareing us of what we need to do to continue to be the community radio stations, which is make sure that we're proactive and that we're creating partnerships, and in particular with entities like this one, where the need for folks in our community is great.
Tony, I know how hard you guys work. Obviously, I've been a part of it and helped out for the last 3 years. I know how hard Rainier Avenue Radio, and I know how hard Isaac, and I know how hard this team works. So I just want to say thank you for coming over and being a part of this as well. We appreciate you guys so much.
All right. Well, that's Isaac. Did you get in here? Isaac behind the camera. I'm trying to get Isaac in front of the camera. and Lucius and everybody. Oh, I see. Oh, it's. Oh, I see. It's a tough shot. No.
There you go.
Oh, there's Isaac.
There he is, right there. We saw.
Okay. No,
there you go. You're gonna pan it out. Pan it out. There we go.
All right. Tip it a little bit, Isaac. There we go. There we go. All right. Come on over here. Come on, squeeze in here.
There you go. We're all here.
There we go. Come on in.
One big happy family.
Make it a little tight. So, yes, Juan, thank you for inviting us up here to Bloodworks Northwest. We're happy to be sharing this information with you. And again, here's the cool thing: if you're just tuning in, or if you're just tuned in a little while ago, when this is done, in about 5-10 minutes, right? You'll be able to watch this whole thing again. You can share the link so that if someone wasn't here and this incredibly invaluable or valuable information, did I get that right?
That's very.
I tried to use those $10 words. I get messed up.
Just say it was some good stuff.
And make sure and share this information. We talked here about the importance of cord blood what it is, what it does, and again, for folks who need this cord blood, there is a disparity and why you should give. And then we're also going to make sure that you understand that we'll remove the challenges and barriers to doing this.
Good.
And you can feel safe. You won't have to be worried about getting turned in or reported. And at the same time, there will be sensitivity to communities like the African American
Correct.
community who are distrusting of the medical community. So all these things will be taken. If not, hold us to the fire. We will hold their feet to the fire and ensure that everyone is comfortable and safe. And at the end of the day, this is going to be a great benefit to everybody. So that's about it. That's about all the time that I have. Thanks to everyone at Bloodworks Northwest on behalf of Karen and Juan and Lucius and Isaac and everyone at Rainier Avenue Radio. It's me, your host, Tony B., saying, remember, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you are probably right. We're out. Peace.